Good morning. Welcome to today's story, a touching, humane, and educational tale.
The place nobody wanted. By the time the desert blackout hit and stranded families, truckers, and half the county along that dead stretch of highway, the only place still breathing with light was an abandoned truck stop run by a 17-year-old girl who had been thrown away like she didn't matter. Her name was Lena Carter. 3 months earlier, she had been standing in the dust with one backpack, $26, and nowhere to go. Nobody looking at that skinny, tired, frightened girl would have guessed she was about to become the reason strangers made it through the worst night of the summer. This story is about how loss can sharpen a person instead of breaking them, how courage sometimes begins with pure desperation, and how the places people call useless can become the very places where purpose, dignity, and hope are rebuilt. The first thing Lena noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind you get at sunrise on a back porch with coffee in your hands and the world still half asleep. This was the hard, hollow silence of a place that had already been given up on. The old truck stop sat off Route 95 in southern Nevada, about 20 miles from the nearest town worth naming. The sign out front still leaned at an angle, its dead bulbs spelling out only a few broken letters at night. The fuel pumps were sun-bleached and cracked. The diner windows were clouded with dust. Wind pushed little spirals of sand across the empty lot, like the land itself was trying to erase the place. Lena stood there in worn sneakers and a faded gray t-shirt, staring at it with dry eyes. She had already cried everything out the night before. Her stepfather, Wade, had not yelled much when he told her to leave. That was the part that stayed with her. He had said it the way a man talks about a broken appliance he is tired of stepping around. I can't keep carrying dead weight. Dead weight. Her mother had been gone 8 weeks. 8 weeks since the heart attack in the kitchen. 8 weeks since the casseroles stopped coming. 8 weeks since Wade turned mean in a quiet, steady way that was somehow worse than shouting. Lena had tried to stay small, useful, invisible. She washed dishes without being asked, kept the laundry moving, stayed out of the living room, ate whatever was left. But grief had made the house feel smaller every day, and Wade had started looking at her like she was a reminder he wanted gone. So now she was here, at the place her mother used to talk about when life was still normal. The Red Moon truck stop, years ago before the interstate exits shifted and the big chain plazas took over. Lena's mother had worked the late shift in the diner. She used to tell stories about truckers with nicknames, pie cooling on the counter, and jukebox songs floating through the place after midnight. In those stories, the truck stop didn't sound lonely. It sounded alive, like the kind of place where people passing through still knew how to be kind. Lena tightened her hand around the old brass key on her keyring. Her mother had kept it in a kitchen drawer for years. For the back office, she used to say. Never know why I still have it. Well, now Lena knew. The side door fought her when she pushed it open. Heat came rolling out of the building like it had been trapped there for years. The air smelled like grease, dust, old coffee, and something electrical left too long in the sun. She stepped inside slowly, letting her eyes adjust. The diner stools were still lined up at the counter. One mug still sat upside down near the register. A calendar on the wall hung open to July, though it had to be at least 10 years old. For a second, the whole place felt suspended in time, like someone had just walked out and forgotten to come back. Lena swallowed hard. This was not a home. It was not safe or clean or easy, but it had walls. And right then, walls counted. She set her backpack down in one of the booths and began moving through the place room by room. The kitchen was a mess. The walk-in cooler was dead. The floor in the stock room had buckled from an old leak. In the back office, she found filing cabinets, mouse-chewed receipts, and a framed photo of the truck stop in its better days. Every parking space full, the diner glowing warm against the dark. Then she found something else, a maintenance notebook. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, fuel records, wiring diagrams, and repairs scribbled in grease pencil. Tucked between 2 stained pages was a folded receipt with a name on it. Margaret Carter, her mother. Lena sat down in the office chair like the strength had gone out of her legs. For the first time since Wade told her to get out, something inside her shifted. Not relief, not safety. Something smaller, quieter, but real. A reason to stay through one night. Then maybe another. Outside, a truck roared past on the highway, never slowing down. Lena wiped her face with the heel of her hand, stood up, and looked around the office again. There was an old generator behind the building, She had seen it on the way in. Rusted out, probably dead, but maybe not completely. Her mother had taught her enough about wiring and small engines to make her less afraid of broken machines than broken people. Machines at least made sense. They failed for a reason, and sometimes if you listened close enough, they told you what they needed. She stepped back into the heat, squinting at the generator behind the service shed. The metal casing was blistered from sun. The handle was stiff. The gas can beside it was empty. Lena let out a slow breath. Well, she said softly to the building, the desert, and maybe to her mother too. I'm still here. That evening, as the sky burned orange over the highway and the first long shadows stretched across the empty lot, Lena dragged a broom out of the supply closet and started sweeping the diner floor. Not because she had a plan, not because she believed everything would work out, but because when the world takes everything at once, sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is clean one corner, claim one room, and decide not to disappear. The first few days, by morning the truck stop looked a little less abandoned. Not alive, not yet, but less forgotten. The early Nevada sun came up fast and bright, pouring hard gold across the parking lot and turning every piece of broken glass into a sharp little flash of light. Lena had slept curled up in a booth with her backpack under her arm and her sneakers still on. She woke with a stiff neck, a dry mouth, and that strange, disorienting second where she forgot where she was. Then she saw the counter, the dust, the faded menu board, and remembered. The red moon, still hers for one more day. Maybe two. She pushed herself up, tied her hair back, and got to work before fear had a chance to settle in again. The first thing she learned was that a place this old made you earn every small victory. The broom left streaks in the dust because the floor was coated too thick. The kitchen sink groaned before it gave her a weak stream of rusty water. The back room smelled like damp cardboard and oil. Still, by noon, she had cleared 3 booths, wiped down half the counter, and opened the front blinds enough to let light into the diner. It was amazing what sunlight could do. It didn't fix anything, but it made the place feel less like a graveyard. Out behind the service shed, the generator waited like a challenge. Lena crouched beside it with the maintenance notebook in one hand and an adjustable wrench in the other. Her mother had never been a trained mechanic, but she believed in learning what you could and not panicking before you had to. She used to say, "Most things break in ordinary ways, honey. Start simple." So Lena started simple. Fuel line, air filter, spark plug. The gas can was bone dry, but the plug itself looked filthy, not ruined. She cleaned it as best she could with an old rag and a careful hand. Sweat slipped down the back of her neck. Dust clung to her arms. Twice she nearly gave up. But on the third try, when she pulled the starter cord, the machine coughed. Just once. Rough, ugly, brief. Still, Lena froze. Then she smiled. It was not a big smile. Not the kind people notice across a room. It was small and tired and private. But it was real. By late afternoon, she heard the crunch of tires on gravel and turned fast, heart jumping into her throat. An old pickup rolled into the lot and stopped near the diner. A man stepped out slowly, tall and sun-weathered, with a gray beard and a denim shirt faded nearly white at the seams. He looked to be in his early 60s, broad-shouldered even now, with the patient, guarded face of someone who had spent most of his life around long roads and longer silences. He took in the open blinds, the swept floor visible through the window, and then Lena standing there with grease on her hands. "You alone here?" he asked. Lena straightened. "Yes, sir." The man studied her for a second. "That usually means one of two things," he said. "Either you're brave or you're out of options." Lena folded her arms more to steady herself than to look tough. "Maybe both." Something flickered in his expression. Not warmth exactly, but respect maybe. He nodded once. "Name's Ray Holt." She had heard the name before. Her mother used to mention a Ray who hauled freight through this route for years and drank black coffee like it was medicine. "Lena Carter," she said. His eyes shifted a little at the last name. "Margaret's girl?" Lena swallowed. "Yeah." For the first time, Ray's voice softened. "Your mama was good people." The words hit her harder than she expected. She looked down, suddenly busy wiping her hands on her jeans. Ray glanced toward the back lot. "Saw you messing with that generator." It almost turned over. "Almost don't keep the lights on." "No," Lena said, "but it means it still wants to run." That got the faintest ghost of a smile out of him. He didn't offer help right away. Men like Ray probably didn't trust easy, and honestly, neither did Lena. But before he left, he reached into his truck bed and pulled out a red gas can with a few inches sloshing in the bottom. "Not much," he said, setting it down by the shed. "Use it smart." Lena looked at the can, then back at him. "Why?" Ray shrugged like the question annoyed him. "Because your mama once stayed open past midnight so I could eat after a bad run through Tonopah. Didn't charge me for the pie either." Then he climbed back into his pickup and drove off in a tail of dust. That evening, Lena poured the gasoline carefully, checked the line one more time, and pulled the starter cord again. The generator coughed, shuddered, then roared to life in one violent, rattling burst that made her stumble back and laugh out loud before she could stop herself. A single light flickered on inside the diner, then another. The glow was weak and uneven, but against the falling desert dusk, it looked almost miraculous. Lena stood in the doorway, breathing hard, staring at those lights like they were proof of something she had not dared believe yet. Maybe she had not saved the place. Maybe the place was saving her first. And when the highway went dark, for the next 2 weeks, Lena lived one small win at a time. She swept. She scrubbed. She patched what she could and ignored what she could not. The red moon was still rough around the edges, but it no longer felt like a place waiting to die. It felt like a place holding its breath. The generator gave her only a few dependable hours each evening, so she learned to use them carefully. One string of lights over the counter, the old coffee maker, if she was lucky, a small fan in the back office when the heat got too sharp to think straight. During the day, she worked with the doors cracked open and the desert wind pushing through the diner like a restless guest. Little by little, people began to notice. Not many, just enough. A delivery driver stopped for bottled water one morning and came back 2 days later for coffee. A retired couple towing a camper pulled in because they saw the lights at dusk and thought the place had reopened. Ray came by every few days, always acting like he was just passing through, though Lena had started to suspect that was not entirely true. He brought practical things without making a speech about it. A better extension cord, a box of shop rags, half a loaf of wheat bread, and a jar of peanut butter one afternoon, left on the counter like they had appeared there by accident. And then on a blistering Thursday, near the end of July, trouble came in on the wind. By noon, the sky had turned strange. Not storm dark exactly. More like the light had gone flat and tense, like the whole desert was bracing for something. The air outside shimmered above the asphalt. Heat waves rolled off the road in wavering lines. Even the birds seemed to disappear. Lena was in the kitchen trying to coax the old freezer into doing something useful when she heard a pickup truck pull hard into the lot. A woman climbed out fast, shutting the driver's door with her hip while reaching into the back seat for a medical bag. She was in her late 20s, maybe early 30s, with dark blonde hair twisted into a loose bun and the tired, alert eyes of someone used to being needed before she was ready. "Please tell me this place has water," she said the second she came through the door. Lena grabbed a cold bottle from the small cooler she had running near the counter. "It's not much, but yeah." The woman drank half of it in one breath and pressed the cold plastic against the side of her neck. "I'm Maya," she said, "travel nurse, heading west. There's a wreck about 7 miles back, and traffic is starting to stack up." Lena frowned. "Bad?" "Bad enough." Maya looked toward the highway, and I passed 2 utility trucks heading the other direction. As if the day had been waiting for that sentence, every light in the diner snapped off. The fan died first. Then the hum of the cooler stopped. Then came the silence. Not a normal silence. A dropped silence. The kind that falls when something larger than you has just gone wrong. Maya turned slowly. "That's your generator." "No," Lena said, already moving. "That was the grid." She stepped out into the heat and looked toward the highway. Far in the distance, along the line of poles that ran beside the road, she could see it. A sag in the power line, then another farther down. The wind had picked up, hot and hard, carrying dust in long brown sheets over the flats. Within 20 minutes, the first stranded drivers began pulling in. A minivan with 2 crying kids and no air conditioning. A trucker with a radiator problem. A couple from Arizona whose phone batteries were down to 3%. Then more, and more. Every one of them asking the same thing. "Do you have power? Do you have water? Do you know what happened?" Lena stood behind the counter, pulse hammering in her ears. This was not what she had planned for. She had been trying to survive quietly. Trying to keep one old building running, trying not to be noticed. Now there were people looking at her like she might know what to do. For one dangerous second, she almost said the truth. "I'm 17. I'm barely holding this place together. I don't know." But then Ray's pickup rolled into the lot, followed close behind by an older sedan Lena recognized from town. Mrs. Alvarez stepped out carrying 2 grocery bags loaded with bread, canned goods, and paper towels like she had read trouble coming before the rest of them. Ray looked once at the growing crowd, once at Lena and said, "How much fuel we got?" Lena blinked. "Not should we help? Not can you do this? Just the next practical question." Something steady settled in her chest. "Enough for a while," she said. "If we run it smart." "Then run it smart," Ray answered. Maya was already moving toward the minivan, checking on one of the kids. Mrs. Alvarez headed for the counter like she belonged there. Ray walked straight to the generator shed without waiting for permission. Lena looked around the diner at the frightened travelers, the heat pressing against the windows, the dead highway beyond the lot. Then she took one slow breath and made a choice. She reached behind the counter, grabbed the maintenance notebook, and flipped to a clean page. "All right," she said louder this time. "Listen up. We're going to keep water moving first, then shade, then phones, one at a time. If you've got medical issues, you tell us now." The room quieted. People listened. And in that moment, Lena understood something that scared her almost as much as it strengthened her. The Red Moon was no longer just a place she had hidden inside. It had become the only place for miles where people could still hope. The people who wanted it back. By the second day of the blackout, the Red Moon did not feel abandoned anymore. It felt crowded, alive, hot, loud, strained, and necessary. The parking lot was full of stranded vehicles coated in desert dust. Families rested in the shade along the side wall. Truckers leaned against their rigs with paper cups of weak coffee. Mrs. Alvarez had turned one end of the counter into a makeshift food station. Maya moved from table to table, checking dehydration, headaches, heat exhaustion. Ray kept the generator on a careful schedule, rationing fuel like a man who understood that sometimes survival came down to numbers and discipline. And Lena barely stopped moving. She filled water jugs, charged phones in timed rotations, calmed worried parents, checked on an older man with chest pain until Maya took over. She was exhausted clear through to the bone, but there was no room left for panic, not anymore. The moment people started depending on her, fear had changed shape. It was still there, but now it had work boots on. That afternoon, just as the heat reached its cruelest point, 2 polished SUVs rolled into the lot. They did not belong there. Everything about them looked wrong against the faded truck stop and dust-covered highway. Clean paint, tinted windows, company logos on the doors, men in pressed shirts stepping out like they expected the ground to behave differently under their shoes. The logo read, Silver Peak Energy Services. Ray saw them and muttered under his breath, "Well, that's trouble wearing sunscreen." The first man to approach was maybe mid-40s, trim, neat, smooth in the way that made Lena instantly uneasy. His name, he said, was Gavin Mercer, Regional Operations Director. He smiled before he spoke, but it never quite reached his eyes. He took in the crowded diner, the extension cords, the coolers, the people resting inside. Then he looked at Lena. "You're in charge here?" Lena stood a little straighter. "I'm running the place, yes. For now," he said pleasantly. Those 2 words landed hard. Gavin explained that Silver Peak had recently acquired development interests in nearby parcels and had been in preliminary discussions regarding older roadside properties in the area. He talked in the polished language of men who thought soft voices made hard intentions sound reasonable. According to him, the Red Moon was unsafe, outdated, and sitting on strategically valuable land. According to him, the company could bring in temporary relief stations, fuel access, backup units, and proper management. According to him, Lena was a minor, and whatever arrangement she thought she had with the property was likely not legally secure. Lena kept her face still. Inside, her stomach dropped. Because that part scared her. She had her mother's key. She had been told the property had sat in tax limbo for years. She had found old paperwork in the office. But nothing final, nothing clean, nothing official enough to stop a company with lawyers and pressed shirts. Gavin must have seen the flicker in her face because his tone turned gentler. "We're prepared to offer a fair emergency use agreement," he said. "You step aside, let professionals handle this, and we make sure everyone here is taken care of." It sounded helpful. That was the dangerous part. It almost sounded helpful. Before Lena could answer, Mrs. Alvarez came out from behind the counter, holding a roll of paper towels like she might use it as a weapon if needed. "She's been taking care of people just fine," she said. Gavin gave her a thin smile. Ma'am, with respect, this isn't a community bake sale. This is a liability issue. Ray stepped in then, slow and steady, wiping his hands on a rag. No, he said, it's a people issue, and she's handling it better than most men I've worked under. A few of the truckers nearby heard that and nodded. Gavin's smile tightened. He did not argue right away. Men like him rarely needed to. They preferred pressure that arrived later, cleaner and colder. And sure enough, it came before sundown. A fuel supplier Lena had been counting on suddenly refused delivery. A county inspector appeared, asking questions about health permits and occupancy limits. Then word started moving through the stranded crowd that the truck stop might be shut down by morning because it was unsafe and unauthorized. Lena felt the ground shift under her, not physically, emotionally. That old helpless feeling came back fast, sharp and ugly. The same feeling she had known in Wade's house. The feeling of being young, cornered, and easy to remove. For one terrible moment, she stood alone in the back office, hands braced against the desk, and let herself think it. Maybe they're right. Maybe this was never really mine to save. Maybe I was just borrowing time. Then she looked down and saw the maintenance notebook still open where she had left it. Her handwriting filled the newest page. Fuel hours, water count, medical needs, phone rotation, names of children, notes about the generator. Every line of it was proof that she had not imagined these last few weeks. This place was running because she had made it run. Not perfectly, not elegantly, but honestly, that mattered. A soft knock came at the office door. It was Maya. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. You okay? Lena laughed once, without humor. No. Good, Maya said gently. That means you understand how serious this is. Lena looked up. Maya leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, tired but steady. Listen to me. Scared is fine. Quitting is different. A minute later, Ray came in with a folder of old county maps he had dug out of his truck. Mrs. Alvarez followed with names of local people willing to speak on Lena's behalf. Even Ethan, dusty and quiet, showed up at the office door saying he thought he could rig the freezer and lighting onto separate cycles to save fuel. Lena looked at all of them and felt something rise in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. Not confidence exactly. Something deeper. Belonging. That night, with the desert sky black outside and the red moon glowing weak but stubborn against it, Lena walked back to the front counter and faced the room. Her voice was calm now. Tomorrow, she said, they're going to try to take this place from us. No one moved. No one looked away. Lena set both hands on the counter. So tomorrow, she said, we make sure they understand it isn't empty anymore. The place where people found their way back. The next morning came hot, bright, and unforgiving. By 8 o'clock, the desert sun was already burning across the lot, turning the windshields outside into sheets of white glare. But this time, the red moon did not look weak. It looked offended. Pickup trucks lined the edge of the property. Stranded drivers who could have left hours earlier stayed anyway. Mothers stood near the diner doors with tired children on their hips. Truckers leaned against the railings with their arms folded. Mrs. Alvarez had fresh coffee going. Maya was moving through the room, calm and capable as ever. Ethan was out back with Ray, making the generator stretch harder than anyone had a right to ask. And Lena stood behind the counter in a clean t-shirt, her hair tied back, her face pale from exhaustion but steady in a way it had never been before. When the county inspector returned, he did not walk into an abandoned property run by a frightened girl. He walked into a place full of witnesses, full of people, full of proof. Ray laid out the old maps and maintenance notes. Mrs. Alvarez spoke first, sharp and fearless, about what this place had meant for families in the blackout. A trucker from Flagstaff talked about the elderly man Maya had stabilized right there in booth number 3. A father from Bakersfield explained how his kids had stayed cool and hydrated in the diner when the highway felt like an oven. Then Maya, with that clear, grounded voice of hers, explained exactly what would have happened to some of those people if the red moon had not stayed open. The inspector listened. So did the deputy standing beside him. So did the Silver Peak men in their pressed shirts, who suddenly looked a little less certain than they had the day before. In the end, the company's words sounded polished, but the truth in the room sounded stronger. Silver Peak could talk about liability. Lena had evidence of service. They could talk about ownership confusion. Ray had found enough county records to show the property had been sitting in neglect for years, with no active claimant stepping forward until it became useful again. And that was the part everyone understood. They had not come when the red moon was broken. They came when it mattered. By late afternoon, The county granted temporary emergency use permission for the property to remain open under local oversight until the blackout passed and ownership could be formally reviewed. It was not a perfect victory. Not yet. But it was enough. Enough for the people inside to breathe. Enough for Silver Peak to back off. Enough for Lena to hold the counter with both hands and let herself feel, for the first time in months, that she was not about to lose everything. 3 months later, the desert looked different, not softer. Nevada did not become gentle just because one story ended well. But the red moon had changed. The diner windows were clean. The sign out front had been repaired, though one letter still flickered now and then, and Ray insisted that gave it character. The fuel pumps worked again. Travelers stopped because they meant to, not because they were stranded. There was fresh pie behind the counter some afternoons, thanks to Mrs. Alvarez. Maya came through twice a month when her route allowed. Ethan stayed on full time, turning out to be the kind of young man who only needed one person to believe he could become dependable. And Lena, now 18, stood at the center of it all with a kind of quiet strength no one could have handed her. Because she had built it herself. Not out of comfort, not out of luck, out of loss, grit, patience, and the stubborn refusal to disappear. One evening, just before sunset, an old sedan pulled into the lot. A teenage girl stepped out with a duffel bag and that unmistakable look Lena knew too well. The look of somebody trying not to fall apart in public. Lena walked out to meet her. No speech, no big performance. Just a gentle voice and a steady hand. "You need a place for the night?" she asked. The girl nodded. Lena glanced back at the truck stop glowing warm against the deepening desert sky. Then she smiled and held open the door. "Come on," she said. "People find their way back here, and maybe that was the real miracle. Not that Lena saved an old truck stop, but that a girl who had once been treated like she had no place in the world became the reason other people could believe they still did." So let me ask you something. If life pushed you out, broke your plans, and left you standing in the dust with almost nothing, would you still have the courage to build something that could shelter someone else? And if this story touched your heart, stay with us. Subscribe to the channel and share in the comments where you're watching from. Because sometimes the stories that stay with us longest are the ones that remind us a forgotten place, and a forgotten person can still become somebody's light.